The third time I sat alone in the waiting area outside the Marriage and Civil Union Court in downtown Chicago, the digital clock on the wall changed to 4:57 p.m. A few weeks earlier, Ethan Reed and I had gone together to the Cook County Clerk's office and obtained our marriage license. All we had to do that afternoon was stand before a judge, say a few words, and let the court certify the marriage. The whole thing should have taken less than 15 minutes. Instead, I had been sitting beneath the same humming fluorescent light since morning. The clerk at the front desk had already begun straightening her papers. A woman who had brought me water twice came around the counter and stopped beside my chair. "Miss Bennett," she said gently, "the judge is about to finish the last ceremony of the day. Is Mr. Reed still coming?" I looked down at my phone. Ethan's last message had arrived at 9:12 that morning. "Leaving the lab now. 20 minutes away." Our apartment in Lincoln Park was 20 minutes from the courthouse on a good day. Even with traffic, it did not take 8 hours. The first time he had failed to show up, he said a cell culture in his lab had produced abnormal results. The second time, one of his doctoral students had been in an accident on the interstate. That day was the third attempt, and I had requested the time off a month in advance because rearranging a surgical schedule was not as simple as moving lunch to another afternoon. I did not call him again. I slid the unused marriage license back into its folder and stood. "He isn't coming," I said. The words should have broken something inside me. Instead, I felt an odd, almost clinical calm. Maybe real disappointment was not a sudden fall. Maybe it was what happened after being placed last so many times that you finally stopped pretending you had ever been first. I left the courthouse and did not go home. I went straight to the administrative building at Lakeshore Medical Center, where I worked as a general surgeon. 3 months earlier, the hospital had nominated me for an advanced complex, minimally invasive surgery and faculty development program at Pacific Crest Medical Center in Seattle. Pacific Crest had already completed its preliminary review. A file had been opened for my Washington medical license application, hospital credentialing, background screening, and faculty appointment. I had asked them to defer my start date because of the wedding. In truth, I had been preparing to decline the opportunity completely. Ethan had made it clear that he did not want to leave Chicago, and I had spent years treating his preferences as decisions we had made together. My department chair stared at me when I placed the signed acceptance form on his desk. "The program starts in 6 weeks," he said. 3 years. "You told me you didn't want to leave Chicago after the wedding." "My plans changed." "Have you talked to Ethan?" I signed the final line and set down the pen. "This is my career. He doesn't get to decide it for me." My chair studied me for a long moment. Then he countersigned the form. The wind outside the administrative building was sharp enough to sting my face. I stood on the steps and realized that, for the first time in 4 years, I was not imagining Ethan's reaction before making a choice. We had been together for 4 years. We had scheduled 3 courthouse ceremonies. Ethan had made his choice every single time he failed to appear. That afternoon, I finally made mine. Ethan did not come home until after 10. He placed a small blue jewelry bag on the kitchen island, the same way he always offered me a gift after disappointing me, as though apology could be outsourced to a sales associate. "Something came up at the lab," he said. "The gift is to make up for today. We'll reschedule the courthouse ceremony." He walked toward the bathroom without asking how long I had waited, whether the clerk had embarrassed me in front of the other couples, or whether I had eaten anything all day. When the shower started, I opened the video Sophia Lane had sent me that afternoon. Sophia was a cardiology researcher at Lakeshore University Medical Institute and Ethan's former research partner. She had also been the great, unfinished love of his life, though I had spent 4 years telling myself that unfinished did not mean ongoing. The video had been recorded in an employee lounge at the research center. Sophia sat on a couch with Ethan's coat draped around her shoulders. Ethan was kneeling in front of her, examining the medication she used for an irregular heartbeat. "Are you really going to marry Claire?" she asked softly. "You know you've always loved me." Ethan did not answer. He did not need to. The way he looked at her was more tender than anything I had seen directed at me in 4 years. Sophia leaned down and kissed him. He hesitated for less than a second before reaching behind her neck and pulling her closer. The video ended there. When Ethan came out of the bathroom, he was drying his hair with one hand and answering messages with the other. His phone made the special chime he had assigned to Sophia. His mouth curved into a smile before he had even finished reading. "I have a remote meeting tonight," he said. "I'll sleep in the study." He passed me without noticing that the jewelry bag on the island had never been opened. For years earlier, Ethan had been the one to suggest we date. Sophia had just accepted a research appointment in Europe. Ethan and I had known each other since college, and one evening he said, "Claire, maybe the person who makes the most sense for me has been here all along." At the time, I heard a confession of love. Now I understood it had sounded more like a practical substitution. I closed Sophia's video and walked to the paper countdown calendar taped to the wall. I crossed out 30 and wrote 29. There were not 29 days until my wedding. There were 29 days until I left Ethan for good. For the next 2 weeks, I did not confront him. I completed my Washington license application, credentialing forms, background check, and housing paperwork. I arranged the transfer of my cases and helped identify surgeons who could follow my patients. At home, I began removing myself one small object at a time. Ethan did not notice. He only seemed relieved that I had become easier. I no longer asked when he would be home. I stopped reminding him about vendor calls, guest confirmations, the photographer, or the rehearsal dinner. The bridal boutique called while I was signing the last set of transition documents at the hospital. "Ms. Bennett," the stylist said, "your fiancé is here with a friend." They said they wanted to check the final fit of the tuxedo and the neckline on the gown. "Are you able to come in?" When I arrived, I saw them through a wall of mirrors. Ethan stood beneath the boutique lights in a white dinner jacket. Sophia wore a sample gown identical to the one I had ordered. A stylist was arranging the veil over her hair. Side by side, they looked more convincing than the couple in the boutique's advertising display. Ethan saw me in the mirror. Alarm flashed across his face, then disappeared beneath the calm expression he used whenever he believed he could explain his way out of something. "You're usually in surgery on Wednesdays," he said. "I didn't want to interrupt you. Sophia is close to your size, so I asked her to help me see whether the neckline would photograph too low." Sophia gathered the skirt in both hands and looked at me with carefully manufactured concern. "Claire, I'm only helping. Please don't misunderstand." I studied their reflection and smiled. "I don't misunderstand. You look beautiful. Both of you do." Ethan's expression tightened. He had expected anger. Tears, perhaps. A scene he could end with a few measured sentences and a gift. My calm made him uneasy because he did not know what to do with a woman who no longer wanted to be reassured. I turned to the stylist. "You don't need to schedule another fitting for me. Just keep the order as it is." A month later, I would not be the woman wearing that dress. On the drive home, Ethan made an unusual attempt to discuss the wedding. "We've been together for years," he said. "We don't need anything excessive. 20 or 30 people. A short ceremony in the chapel, dinner afterward. Simple." He had called my $8,000 budget wasteful. 3 nights later, he took me to a rooftop ballroom overlooking the Chicago River for Sophia's birthday. A mutual friend laughed as she handed me a glass of champagne. Ethan really went all out. This party had to cost at least $80,000. Crystal chandeliers reflected in the windows. A champagne tower rose beside an entire wall of flowers. A string quartet played near the terrace doors. I remembered spending an entire evening explaining why $8,000 for our wedding was not extravagant. The memory made me feel foolish, but not because I had wanted a beautiful ceremony. I had been foolish because I believed Ethan disliked extravagance. He did not. He simply did not believe I was worth it. He barely left Sophia's side all evening. When she said the lights were too bright, he asked the hotel to dim the fixtures above the head table. When she reached for champagne, he replaced it with sparkling water. When it was time to cut the cake, he stood behind her and guided her hand over the knife with the ease of a man who had celebrated many birthdays with her. Sophia glanced at me and smiled. "You don't mind, do you? Ethan just knows my medical history so well." I smiled back. "Of course not. Usually, the relationships that require the most explanations are the ones people understand perfectly." Her smile faltered. Ethan did not hear the warning in my voice. He drank too much that night. In the rideshare home, he leaned against the seat with his eyes closed and whispered Sophia's name. I sat beside him and felt nothing. Once an answer becomes certain, even pain can grow quiet. After the birthday party, Ethan came home less and less. I packed the matching coffee mugs, the empty photo frames we had never filled, and the coordinated sweatshirts he had never worn. I donated everything to a neighborhood charity shop. The apartment looked emptier every day. One evening, Ethan stood in the living room and frowned. "Didn't we have more stuff in here?" "I'm replacing a few things," I said. He nodded and walked away. He did not understand that the missing things were not decorations. They were evidence that I had ever imagined a life there. 7 days before the formal wedding, Ethan rolled a carry-on out of the bedroom. "A research issue came up in Boston," he said. "I'll be back within 10 days for the wedding." I was tearing the countdown calendar off the wall. My hand stopped. "The wedding is in 7 days. He blinked, clearly doing the math for the first time. "I'll do my best." I did not tell him that the chapel, restaurant, officiant, photographer, and florist had all been canceled. After he left, I began doing the things I had postponed while waiting for him to join me. I hiked alone. I rode the Ferris wheel by the lake. I took out the ticket to a concert I had bought months earlier. Originally, there had been 2 tickets. The band had been my favorite in high school, and I had been excited when I showed them to Ethan. He had barely looked at the tickets. "Concerts are loud. I'm not interested. Take someone else." I had returned 1 ticket and kept my own. Walking into the arena alone should have embarrassed me. Instead, it felt like practice for the rest of my life. Halfway through the show, the kiss cam began sweeping across the audience. Couples laughed and kissed while thousands of people cheered. Then Ethan's face appeared on the giant screen. He was sitting in a private box. He had never gone to Boston. Sophia sat beside him. When the camera settled on them, she lifted her face and kissed him. He hesitated, then kissed her back in front of an arena full of people. The crowd roared. I remembered him telling me concerts were too loud and held no interest for him. The truth was simpler. He did not dislike concerts. He disliked attending them with me. After the show, I moved with the crowd toward the exit. Ethan must have seen me across the concourse because he pushed through the people and caught my wrist. "Claire? What are you doing here?" Sophia hurried after him. "The camera was already on us," she said quickly. I didn't want to embarrass him in front of everyone. Ethan was just playing along. I looked down at his hand around my wrist. He released me as if I had burned him. "You used to say there was no point going to a concert alone," he said. I looked at him for several seconds. What I had said was that I wanted him to come with me. He had never listened closely enough to know the difference. "I changed my mind," I said. "Being alone can be enjoyable." Ethan frowned, searching for an explanation. Sophia coughed lightly, and his attention shifted to her at once. "It's cold outside," he told me. "I'm taking Sophia home. Wait by the main entrance. I'll come back for you." "Wait." Again. I nodded, watched them leave together, and took a cab home by myself. That night, Ethan messaged me and asked me to send a research grant file from the computer in his study. I followed the folder path he gave me. When I opened it, an email archive labeled S appeared in the preview pane. I intended to close it, but Sophia Lane's name was visible in the first line. The archive contained 4 years of draft emails. If you had never left Chicago, I would never have been with anyone else. Claire is steady and kind. She handles the practical parts of my life, and she hates confrontation. She won't leave easily. Once the formal wedding is over, our families and colleagues will stop asking questions. Marriage won't change how I feel about you, and it won't change what exists between us. The last draft was dated the day before our 3rd scheduled courthouse ceremony. I took screenshots of the pages I needed. Then I sent his research file, closed the computer, and sat alone in the dark study. At last, I understood why Ethan had asked me to date him and why he had delayed marrying me again and again. I was not the woman he loved. I was the stable life he selected while the woman he loved was somewhere else. Ethan came home the next morning. When he saw my suitcase in the entryway, Genuine panic crossed his face for the first time. The wedding is in 3 days. Where are you going? To the airport. He stared at me, then forced what he was seeing into an explanation he could tolerate. A pre-wedding trip? Fine. I'll drive you. I did not answer. He changed clothes, carried my suitcase to the car, and reached for his keys. Then Sophia's special ringtone sounded. Ethan answered. His face changed almost immediately. Don't move. I'm coming. He ended the call and turned to me. Sophia isn't feeling well. It may be another heart rhythm issue. Wait here for half an hour. I'll take care of it and come back to drive you. And if you don't come back? I asked. He was already at the door. His voice carried the casual certainty of a man who had never once believed I would leave him. I said I'll be back. Don't start a fight. Just wait for me. The door closed. The apartment became so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking. I looked at the ring he had given me beside the car keys and laughed softly. Even at the very end, Ethan believed that saying wait for me was enough to keep me exactly where he had left me. I placed the ring, the cancellation confirmation for the formal wedding, and my Pacific Crest acceptance letter in an envelope. I set it on top of the torn countdown calendar. On the front, I wrote one sentence. You said you would be back in 10 days for the wedding. Don't worry. There is no wedding anymore. Then I took my suitcase and left. No argument. No final confrontation. No waiting for him to return. As the cab headed toward O'Hare, I disconnected my old number and removed the people who had spent years telling me to be patient with him. I did not look back through the rear window. A mutual friend later told me Ethan returned to the apartment 3 hours later. He saw the empty side of the closet, the ring, and the cancellation notice. For the first time, he understood that my leaving was not a threat designed to frighten him. He called dozens of times and drove to O'Hare. By then, I was already on a flight to Seattle. My first year there was not romantic. Pacific Crest Medical Center demanded more from me than any position I had held before. A new city, licensing requirements, credentialing, specialty examinations, overnight rotations, and faculty evaluations left me exhausted. Some evenings, I came home to my small apartment and did not turn on the lights. But the exhaustion was different. In Chicago, I had been tired from waiting for a man who did not love me. In Seattle, I was tired because I was building a future that belonged to me. About 6 months after leaving Chicago, I met Lily through a medical foster care volunteer program affiliated with the hospital. She was 10 months old, with soft brown hair and watchful gray-green eyes. She had been abandoned shortly after birth and had a congenital immune disorder that required careful monitoring. She lived in a foster center designed for children with ongoing medical needs. I was not her physician. On Sundays when I was not on call, I volunteered at the center, reading to the children and helping staff organize supplies. Lily rarely cried and almost never reached for people. But when I sat beside her, she would close her fist around the edge of my scrub jacket and refuse to let go. I began visiting regularly. I attended follow-up appointments conducted by an independent medical team. I learned how she slept, what frightened her, and the small warning signs that appeared before she developed a fever. During my second year in Seattle, I completed the first stage of my advanced training and received a faculty appointment at Pacific Crest, along with a more predictable surgical schedule. Lily's social worker asked whether I would consider becoming her licensed medical foster parent. I said yes before she finished the question. As a citizen, a physician, and a woman with a stable income, I met the basic qualifications. But I still took emergency calls, my apartment was not suitable for a child, and I had no approved adult who could take over when I was called into surgery without warning. The social worker did not reject me. She explained the problem carefully. For a child with long-term medical needs, we have to know that she has stable housing, a backup caregiver, and a 24-hour plan that works in real life. Being single is not the issue. But love alone isn't enough to pass a home study. I understood the caution. Understanding did not make me feel less helpless. That was when I met Adrian Cole. He did not enter my life by rescuing me from a violent crisis. He did not push past my boundaries or mistake control for devotion. Adrian was chairman of the Cole Children's Health Foundation, the largest long-term supporter of the hospital's medical foster care program. He also served as chief executive of the Cole Group, a family-owned investment and technology company headquartered in Seattle. The first time we met, he sat at the far end of a conference table and listened while I proposed improvements to the program's overnight medical support system. When I finished, he asked, "Are you making these recommendations as a surgeon or as someone who wants to become Lily's mother?" "Both," I said. After that meeting, the foundation approved additional overnight support for the entire foster program. Adrian did not alter my schedule, contact Lily's caseworker, or interfere with her placement. His assistant later sent me a list of apartments owned by a foundation partner. I returned it. "I'll find housing through the standard process," I told Adrian. "I don't want anyone to think that knowing a donor gives me an advantage over other families." He did not argue. "That's a reasonable boundary," he said. A few weeks later, he saw me at the foster center again. I had just completed a 14-hour overnight shift and could barely keep hold of my coffee, but I had still come for Lily's appointment. I could recite every fever, medication, and change in appetite from the previous month. Adrian stood at the other end of the hall and watched me for a long time. Several months later, he offered me an agreement. His grandfather's private family trust required Adrian to marry and establish an independent household before the age of 35 in order to receive the voting shares assigned to him. Otherwise, control of those shares would remain with Adrian's uncle for another 5 years. My unmarried status did not prevent me from fostering or adopting Lily. The problem was practical. My emergency schedule, lack of approved backup care, and housing situation made it difficult for the state to approve long-term placement. If I applied with a spouse who accepted full responsibility as a co-parent, Lily would have a more stable plan. "I am not offering to buy you an adoption," Adrian said, pushing the agreement across the table. "You can continue applying as a single parent. You would need to solve the scheduling, housing, and backup care problems first. The other option is that we enter a legal marriage, live in the same household, and I apply with you. I would undergo every background check and home study requirement. It would be a real legal marriage. It simply would not begin with romance." The document was specific. Our property would remain separate. We would have separate bedrooms and equal rights to end the marriage. After 2 years, we would formally review the arrangement. If Lily's adoption was completed, neither divorce nor the end of the agreement would erase our parental responsibilities. I read it 3 times. "Why me?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Because I believe you won't exploit the marriage," he said. "And because Lily trusts you." I did not accept immediately. I retained my own family law attorney, someone with no connection to the Cole Group or the foundation. Adrian submitted a written recusal to the foundation's board and withdrew from every discussion involving Lily's case, funding, placement, or review. The social worker conducting our home study warned us directly. "Mr. Cole's wealth and donations will not accelerate this process. You will be evaluated by the same standards as any other applicants. Only after those protections were in place did I sign." At the time, I did not ask why Adrian was willing to write his name into Lily's future. Years later, he told me that he had left one sentence unsaid that day. He was already beginning to care for me. He simply refused to use my fear of losing Lily to pressure me into accepting his feelings. We had a civil ceremony at the courthouse in downtown Seattle with our attorneys and 2 friends present. But marriage did not make Lily's foster placement or adoption happen overnight. For months, home study investigators examined our living arrangements, financial records, backgrounds, work schedules, relationship, and plans for Lily's medical care. Adrian did not perform affection for the investigators, and he never asked me to invent a love story. He said the truth. Our marriage began for practical reasons. But I am willing to remain responsible for this child permanently. If our marriage ends one day, she will still be my daughter. During my 3rd year away from Chicago, the adoption was finalized. Her legal name became Lily Bennett Cole. Our agreement required separate bedrooms, privacy, and advanced discussion before public appearances. Adrian followed every line. He never entered my room without permission. He never demanded details about Ethan or treated his help as something I owed him for. He did not use generosity as a leash. Lily called him Daddy for the first time during a thunderstorm. She had a high fever, and I was called to the hospital for an emergency operation. I stood in the doorway with my bag in my hand, unable to make myself leave. Adrian took the medicine and temperature log from me. "Go," he said. "You take care of the patient in the operating room. I'll take care of our daughter." The surgery lasted 9 hours. When I came home, dawn was breaking. Adrian was asleep beside Lily's bed, one of his hands trapped in both of hers. After she woke, Lily told me that she had cried for me during the night. Adrian had not simply said I was gone. He told her Mom is helping another child get home to their mom. Then she rested her head against his shoulder and called him Daddy. His eyes filled with tears. After that, he learned how to be a father in hundreds of ordinary ways. He video called Lily during business trips. He memorized her nut allergy. He tried to braid her hair for preschool family day and produced something so uneven that she wore a hat over it. In the first family portrait she drew, he stood beside me, all three of us holding hands beneath a purple sun. None of that transformed our marriage into a romance overnight. I remained cautious. Adrian never rushed me. 1 year, an overseas acquisition by the Cole Group collapsed. For days, financial networks and newspapers questioned his judgment. Late one night, I found him alone in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee he had not touched. I did not ask how much money the company had lost. I made him a simple bowl of noodles and slid it across the counter. "I don't understand your business," I said. "But I know that when someone is exhausted, they shouldn't forget to eat." Adrian looked up at me. "You don't have to take care of me because of the agreement. This isn't because of the agreement." The words left my mouth before I could reconsider them. We both became very still. It was the first time I admitted, even indirectly, that he had become more than a contractual partner to me. During my 4th year away from Chicago, on the 2nd anniversary of our civil marriage, Adrian placed signed divorce papers in front of me. "Your permanent appointment at Pacific Crest is confirmed," he said. "Lily's adoption is final. The voting rights under the family trust belong to me now, and divorce cannot reverse that. You're free." I looked at his signature on the last page. Instead of relief, I felt as though someone had removed the floor beneath me. "Do you want a divorce?" I asked. He paused, then answered honestly. "No." "Then why did you sign first?" "Because I was the one who proposed the agreement. I don't want you to reach the end of it and wonder whether you're still allowed to leave." He had returned the choice to me completely. I picked up the pen but did not sign. "Lily thinks this is home," I said. Adrian waited. I took a breath. "So do I." We did not embrace. We did not suddenly kiss as music swelled around us. He put the divorce papers in a drawer and asked what I wanted for dinner. But I knew something had changed. A few months later, I was appointed medical director of Pacific Crest's complex surgery program. Adrian sat in the last row at the reception and waited until everyone else had left before handing me flowers. "Congratulations, Dr. Bennett." I corrected him with a smile. "Medical Director Bennett." "Of course, Medical Director Bennett." That same year, Adrian told me plainly that he loved me. There was no candlelit dinner and no demand for an answer. Lily was asleep. He stood in the doorway of my study and said, "I know you may not be ready. I'm telling you because I don't want to keep hiding my feelings behind the word agreement." I was quiet for a long time. "I need more time." "All right." As always, he closed the door gently behind him. Later, Lily asked me, "Mom, why do you smile every time you see Daddy?" I stared at her. For years, I had told myself I was only grateful to Adrian and still not prepared to love anyone. But I could not explain why I waited for the light in the living room when he worked late, why I worried when he did not answer during a flight, or why another woman showing interest in him left me irrationally irritated. Ethan had taught me not to place my entire life in another person's hands. Adrian taught me something different. Love did not have to make me smaller. Real love allowed me to become more fully myself. 5 years after I left Chicago, my former hospital invited me back to lead a 3-month complex surgery collaboration. Lily was legally and emotionally my daughter. Adrian planned to travel with us, but a multi-state acquisition delayed him for several days. The day Lily and I landed at O'Hare, I saw Ethan in the arrivals hall. He looked older than 5 years should have made him. His face was leaner, his expression quieter. Sophia stood beside him. Both wore wedding rings, but they did not look like a couple accustomed to reaching for one another. Ethan froze when he saw me. Then he looked at Lily. She had brown hair like mine, and years of living together had given us similar expressions. His eyes reddened almost immediately. "Claire," he whispered. "Is she?" "No." I knew what he was asking and stopped him before he could finish. Lily gave them the polite smile she used with strangers. "Hello." Our driver approached and took the luggage from me. "Mrs. Cole, the car is outside." The color left Ethan's face. "You're married." I lifted my left hand. The ring had been there for years. "Yes." Sophia immediately linked her arm through his. "We've been married more than 4 years too," she said. "The past should stay in the past." I nodded. "I agree." As the car pulled away from the airport, Lily knelt on the seat to look through the rear window. "Mom, why did that man keep staring at you?" "Because he mistook me for someone else." "Who?" I watched Chicago slide past the window. The woman who would always wait for him. During my second week back, Ethan began appearing at the hospital. The first time, he claimed he was attending an academic meeting. The second time, he said a colleague needed a consultation. The third time, he stopped me in the parking garage. "I knew you were in Seattle," he said. "I read every professional update the hospital published about you." I kept walking. "You blocked my calls. Later, you sent one formal message telling me not to contact you again. For 5 years, I've wanted to speak to you in person." He followed me between the parked cars. "After you left, I realized you had been managing everything. My medications in the refrigerator. The documents in my study. Coffee ready every morning. When you were gone, I understood how much I depended on you." I stopped and faced the man I had once loved for most of my adult life. 5 years ago, I thought that was love too. Hope rose in his eyes. I continued. "Then I learned it was habit. You were used to being cared for. I was used to waiting. Habit isn't love." He told me that his marriage to Sophia was unhappy. Once they lived together, they discovered that the relationship they had idealized across years and distance was mostly obsession. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said. "Claire, we could start over." I looked at his wedding ring. "You are still Sophia Lane's husband. We're separated. I can divorce her." "You're doing it again," I said, treating the end of one relationship as a bargaining chip for the beginning of another. The hope disappeared from his face. That evening, Sophia came to the hospital. She cornered me at the end of a quiet corridor and lowered her voice. "Ethan has been looking for you all week. You're married now. Don't come back here and destroy my family." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. "I have not contacted him, and I will not take him back." "You expect me to believe that?" "Believe whatever you want. But if you want to save your marriage, speak to your husband. Stop treating another woman as the enemy every time he refuses to take responsibility for himself." Her expression hardened. I walked away. That night, I sent Ethan everything I had saved 5 years earlier: Sophia's video, the bridal shop photographs, the concert recording, and screenshots of his 4 years of emails. It was the first time he saw all the evidence together. I included one sentence. "You keep saying you don't understand why I left. Now you can take your time and look. When you're finished, do not contact me again." At 2 in the morning, he sent a long email. He wrote that he had never understood that, during the years he called me patient and easygoing, I had been pushed closer to despair each time he chose Sophia and expected me to absorb it quietly. He realized the wedding countdown had not been a sign of excitement. It had been the final time limit I had given him. He apologized. I read the email once and deleted it. An apology can prove that someone finally recognizes what they did. It cannot erase the harm, and it does not become a ticket back into the life they damaged. Adrian arrived in Chicago without telling me his exact flight. That afternoon, Lily's caregiver picked her up from school and brought her to the staff lounge at the hospital, as planned, so she could wait for me to finish surgery. When I walked into the main lobby holding Lily's hand, Adrian was standing at the far end. Lily saw him first. She released me and ran. He bent to lift her, then looked over her shoulder at me. In that moment, I realized how natural it had become to search for him in every room. "Why didn't you tell me your flight time?" I asked when I reached him. "I wanted to surprise you. What if we hadn't been at the hospital? Then I would have gone home and waited." He said it casually. The word waited held me still. Ethan had asked me to wait countless times and never wondered whether I was alone. When Adrian said he would wait, he meant that he respected my time. He would not drag me away from my work or demand that I reorganize my life around his arrival. He would simply go to the home we shared and be there when I returned. Before my Chicago project ended, the hospital and the Cole Children's Health Foundation organized a joint fundraising gala. Lakeshore University Medical Institute was a partner, and Sophia, as director of a cardiac research initiative, was scheduled to present a collaborative grant proposal. At the same time, a dispute within the Cole family moved into civil court. Adrian's uncle filed portions of our old marital agreement as exhibits, trying to prove that Adrian had used marriage merely to satisfy the family trust and obtain voting control. Financial reporters found the documents in the public court record. Their stories did not include the full agreement, but they contained enough to invite speculation. Sophia downloaded the filing. Her goal was not to help Ethan. She wanted to damage my professional reputation. If she could persuade hospital leadership and donors that I had used Adrian, Lily, and the image of a stable family for personal advantage, she believed I would be forced to leave Chicago. Before the gala, she stopped me outside the restroom and lifted the printed court exhibit. "You said you weren't interested in Ethan," she said. "Then everyone should know what your current marriage really is." I looked at the expired agreement in her hand and did not try to stop her. A secret can be used as a weakness only while you are afraid to admit it. Once I accepted the truth, it no longer had the power to shame me. Halfway through the gala, Sophia walked on stage according to the program and began presenting Lakeshore's joint initiative. On the final slide, she changed the presentation. The old marital agreement appeared on the large screen behind her. "Before we continue talking about charity and family," she said into the microphone, "perhaps everyone should know that Claire Bennett and Adrian Cole's marriage began as a transaction. She needed a stable co-caregiver to complete the adoption of a child. He needed a marriage to gain control of family voting shares. They are not the devoted couple they pretend to be." The ballroom became silent. Ethan stood near the back. Hope returned to his face, as though the exposed agreement had created an opening for him. Adrian did not seize the microphone or rush forward to defend me. He simply looked at me, the way he always had, and left the decision in my hands. I walked onto the stage and accepted the microphone from the host. "She's right about one thing," I said. "Our marriage began with an agreement." A low murmur passed through the room. But I had my own medical license, income, and career. No one allowed me to bypass the foster care or adoption process. No one purchased a child. The agreement governed our property and the manner in which either of us could leave. It did not create or erase our responsibility to Lily. I looked at Adrian. The agreement allowed either of us to end the marriage without conditions after 2 years. On the day it expired, Adrian gave me signed divorce papers. He made sure I was free to choose. I paused. I did not sign them. The room quieted again. 5 years have passed. My career, my income, and my daughter no longer depend on this marriage. I am still beside him not because the agreement never ended, but because I chose not to end us. For years, Adrian respected my work, protected my right to make my own decisions, and loved Lily as his daughter. When I was at the lowest point of my life, he did not demand that I forget my past. He did not pressure me to love him. He simply stood beside me, one day after another. Ethan moved toward the front of the room. "If there wasn't love in the beginning," he said, "then you still have a choice. We've known each other most of our lives. I was there first. You are not," I said. He stopped. "Knowing me earlier does not give you permanent priority. Regretting your choices does not require me to reverse mine." I held his gaze. "You did not lose me the day I boarded a plane. You lost me every time you chose her and still expected me to wait." Ethan stood in front of the silent room with nothing left to say. I turned to Sophia. There was never a competition between us. A man who truly belongs in your life does not require you to humiliate another woman to prove it. Exposing this agreement will not make a man who no longer loves you fall in love again. All the color drained from her face. I returned the microphone to the host and stepped down from the stage. Adrian was waiting where I had left him. For the first time in public, I reached for his hand first. The agreement expired a long time ago, I said. I know. Then why haven't you ever asked what we are now? Because I promised the choice would be yours. I looked at him and stopped hiding from the answer that had been growing inside me for years. Then I'm telling you now. Adrian Cole, I choose you. His fingers tightened around mine. It was not a dramatic proposal. There was no ring waiting in his pocket and no crowd applauding on cue. After the gala, we stood on the hotel's terrace above the city lights. I took the printed copy of the old agreement from my bag and wrote a new sentence on the blank space beneath the final clause. New agreement, no expiration date. We discuss every difficult decision. Neither of us is allowed to decide alone that leaving is best for the other. I handed him the pen. Will you sign again? Adrian read the sentence and smiled as though a weight he had carried for years had finally been lifted. I want to add one condition. What? No matter what happens, you never have to carry it alone. He signed beside my words. 3 months later, we held a small vow renewal ceremony on the Oregon coast, where Lily loved to look for shells. There were no business associates, reporters, or decorations expensive enough to overwhelm the reason we were there. Lily wore a pale blue dress and carried the ring box. Halfway down the aisle, she stopped and whispered loudly to Adrian, "Daddy, this one can't be for 2 years." Everyone laughed. Adrian crouched in front of her and answered with complete seriousness. "This time, it's for life." Before we exchanged our vows, he looked at me. "Any regrets?" I thought of the woman who had waited alone at the Cook County Courthouse until the building was almost closed. She had believed that if she was patient enough, helpful enough, undemanding enough, a man would eventually choose her with certainty. She eventually learned that love should not be proven by how long one person is willing to wait. Marriage should not be a prize awarded after someone has lowered every boundary they once had. I looked at Adrian and shook my head. My only regret is that it took me so long to admit I was already in love with you. After the ceremony, I received one final message from Ethan. "I hope you're happy. This time, I mean it." I did not reply. I put the phone away and took Adrian's hand in one of mine and Lily's in the other. Some people enter your life to teach you how much losing yourself can cost. Others show you, through years of ordinary devotion, that real love is not dramatic possession. It is respect, repeated every day. 5 years earlier, Ethan had promised he would be back in 10 days for our wedding. I had left him a note saying there was no wedding anymore. 5 years later, I finally had a wedding that truly belonged to me. Not because I waited for someone to return. Because I learned how to stop looking back.